Good morning, all. Welcome to the FNO Information Hub's 1 year on celebration event today. So, before we start, there's a couple of housekeeping I want to go through with you. Please keep yourself on mute. This session's being recorded. If you would like, you can keep your cameras on. Okay, thank you. And I can see people are still joining, so I'll just wait for a couple of minutes and see. Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Shamla Rajaratnam. I work within the FNO Information Hub, and I'm an FNO Operational Delivery Lead, and I'll be hosting this session today. And we've got some of our panel members with us today, so I'm going to be introducing them to you, and I'll get them to wave at you. So we've got Ellie English. She's the head of FNO Operational FNO Service and Delivery for HMPPS. We've got Tammy Hay from there's Tammy, okay, resettlement manager from Maidstone Prison. We've got Michelle Loudon. She's from Home Office, Assistant Director, and Immigration Prison Team South. And we've got Lucy Teets. She's the Regional Drug Strategy and FNO Lead from the HMPPS Wales region. And then we've got Sophie Lovejoy, Deputy Head of FNO Service and Delivery for HMPPS. And that's all our panel today. Please note, during the session, you can put your questions down on the chat function that you want to kind of send, ask the panel members. Please don't ask any case-specific questions. So make sure your questions are generic. If you want to direct a question to one specific panel member, please can you specify that in your question? We will try and answer all your questions today. So when we hear from all the panel members, there'll be a Q&A session at the end, during which I will direct the questions, some of your questions to the panel members. And questions we're not able to answer today, we will send out, provide you with answers later on. So that's that, and I'm sure that's also added into the message chat function as well about what I've just said. Thank you for that. And I'm going to now ask Ellie English to give a brief introduction.
Thanks, Sham. Good morning and welcome, everybody. It's really good to see a lot of people coming today to the event. I just bear with me 1 second. I've got a bit of feedback. Is there any way to just mute it or something? Okay, I'll carry on and keep hearing myself, which is terrible, but I'll do my best. So today we're reflecting on a year since the FNO Information Hub was created. I think it's really important to think about where we were a year ago compared to now, and the work that's been done and sort of how we've progressed really in terms of the FNO world. So a year ago, we were in a position where our FNO only prisons at the time, Maidstone and Huntercombe, and obviously now we have Morton Hall as well, didn't have resettlement function, didn't have resettlement funding or resettlement staffing. And mainly because the presumption for FNOs was that all FNOs will be deported. We know that that's not the case, and some will be released into the UK either temporarily or permanently. And so the position we were in a year ago was based on that presumption, and prisons didn't have that resettlement function. There was also no support nationally for prisons to help prepare FNOs either for release or removal. So a pilot was carried out at Huntercombe Prison and they did some absolutely fantastic work to look at how you can prepare individuals for release or removal, supported by the PGD Alison Clark. And we took the learnings from that and the progress that was made at Huntacue and the fantastic work that they did, and looked at what was needed on a national front. So that was when the F&O Information Hub was born. Two things then happened following that pilot and building on the work of the pilot. The team worked really hard. Well, first of all, we put the team together, cross-government team. We've got prison colleagues, Home Office colleagues, and probation within our team. And we spent quite a bit of time really trying to understand what was happening in prisons, how F&Os were supported, and what was needed to help prisons to do that. And so really in the last kind of 9-month period, we've done nearly 20 prison visits to understand the picture, regional PGD visits, and gone through lots of research and various other things around F&Os to find out what was needed out there. It's really clear that one of the biggest things was understanding the immigration process itself. It's quite complicated, and trying to break that down for both prison staff and F&Os themselves to understand what was going to be happening to them. And also for those people who are reluctant to return to their home country and are being deported, how we can support them, especially if they haven't been to their home country for quite some time. And then also for those F&Os being released into the community, the challenges in terms of those being released temporarily and what's available to them in terms of services, and those who are going to be released permanently into the UK. So what we've delivered so far, here we go, some highlights. So we've been running an F&O Spock pilot in 2 regions. I can see on the screen in the conference room next door a couple of our Spocks there. It's been a fantastic pilot so far and has really shone a light on F&Os in prisons, having that person to go to in prison to ask lots of questions, but they also have that link in with us if they're not sure of the answer, to come and we'll go and find out if we can. And it's meant that there's been an increased engagement and attendance by the Home Office at those prisons in terms of surgeries. It's also helped with things like self-harm because of things like procedural justice. F&Os understanding what is happening to them means that they are in a better place and they can work through it with prison staff, rather than things being a bit of a surprise and having to then deal with that. We have got fact sheets available in sort of really easy read language on all of the removal schemes, and in particular the facilitated removal scheme. We've done some heavy promotion across the prison estate, and the numbers have rapidly increased. Home Office has done a really good job on promoting that, but with our support in terms of prison radio and getting the message out there across prisons. Regional guides for all, regional guides for services for those F&Os going to be released into the UK. As I mentioned, it's a tricky one, especially if it's a temporary period of time going to be in the UK. So we have pulled together regional guides for prison and probation staff to refer to. And we provided over 116 prisons, almost all prisons, with F&O journey maps and F&O booklets translated into top 5 languages. So 14,000 of those booklets went out across the estate, which is fantastic. So impact really of what we've been doing. So the resources have been really well received, and feedback is that they really help the operational line to support F&Os, help to understand the immigration process, both from the staff point of view and the F&Os. There's a team, there's us for people to go to with queries, but also we can share good practice across the estate, work that you're doing in prisons, highlight it and replicate it across the estate. And biggie, there is resettlement funding in the F&O only prisons, and you're going to be hearing a little bit more about that in just a second, about Maidstone's journey since that funding and resource came in. So just to turn, the next year is going to be another busy one, building on what we've done so far and the work to date, and we'll be talking about that as well in our presentation on the hub a little bit later. Thanks, back to you, Sha.
Thanks, Ellie. So next bit is going to be Tammy's going to be introducing the Maidstone video. So Jill, before we do that, Tammy, are you able to just give us a little brief introduction to the video that we're going to be seeing?
Morning. So yeah, just to give you a little introduction, I'm from Maidstone. We are a Category C prison with 600 prisoners, all of which are foreign national. I'm going to give you an overview on what we've done at Maidstone over the last year. It's about 8 minutes long. The video was filmed and edited by our prisoners here on the digital media course. So we've also got a couple of them that have given a bit of an overview of their lived-in experience too. So yeah, enjoy.
Thanks, Tammy.
I'm Tammy Hay, I'm the resettlement manager at Maidstone Prison. I took over the post of resettlement manager last year in February, and back then we discovered that resettlement needed improving here. Our engagement was at 36%. So what we did was we looked at our preparation for release process, we improved our booklets, and we refreshed it to streamline them. Making sure that we're asking the right questions, making sure we're making smart referrals, and raising awareness of the resettlement department at the jail. What became apparent is some of the barriers that we were facing is the prisoners didn't want to engage with the resettlement department because they're a little bit concerned that it would help aid them being deported. So what we did is we raised our awareness, set the expectations of what resettlement were trying to do, and using our peer mentor to explain all of our services, and we held wing surgeries too, so that we could explain what information was being used and why. And in doing that, we've managed to raise our engagement to 76% now, which is a real achievement for the resettlement department. Some of the things we have introduced here at Maidstone to improve our resettlement services is we have introduced resettlement release boards so that we can catch up with the prisoners prior to their release, ensure that the referrals that we've made on the induction process are being seen to, and any last minute issues that they're facing to prepare them for their release. We designed a release pack so that we can give information that has a step-by-step release plan for the prisoners to think about to arrange prior to their release, what they need to do in prison, and also what they need to be doing on the outside. Within that pack, we designed a leaflet for them to send to their families, for them to be looking at what is available out there for them, and to help them prepare for the prisoner's release. That has kind of proved really popular. Every prisoner will receive a release pack 3 months prior to release. So the release packs can be given to prisoners whether they're being released in the UK or abroad. If we know what country the prisoner is going to be released to, then we tailor it to their release country. We can do it in their language as well. We will include information from the track system, so that's really helpful. So we offer resettlement release clothing, and this has kind of come about where we realised that prisoners here may have come here with just the clothes off their back. So what we've done is we have bins in our reception where prisoners can donate clothes. We then launder them here, and our peer mentor sorts through them, itemises them all, and through a simple application from the prisoners, if they're due to be released soon and they don't have any clothes, they can come over, try some bits on, figure out what they need, and we donate it to them for them to be able to take home or wear home. Okay, so to raise awareness of the resettlement department, we introduce wing surgeries. so that we could go out onto the wings asking any questions, set the expectations. You'd be surprised, some prisoners think that we can give them keys to a bungalow in the countryside. That's not something we can do, but we can make referrals to housing agencies. So by getting out on the wings, that was really good. To also raise awareness, we've set some slides up on the media channel and we advertise the resettlement services on there too. We're lucky to have a media channel here so that it can be on the TVs in all our prisoner cells. We designed a resettlement application, so where we have language barriers here, being full foreign national, we designed an application that is just a tick box, so for certain things, whether it be the release clothing, accommodation issues, wanting help from Citizens Advice to get their property, missing property. So they just literally tick a box, send it to the resettlement department, and our peer mentor will do a triage. We'll go out, see the guys. If they can help, then they will. If not, they'll come back and we'll arrange an appointment. That's become more popular than our general apps, so they don't have to do lots of writing, so they, it's a lot easier. Now you're going to hear from two of our prisoners their experience of the resettlement journey here.
So today we're going to talk about the resettlement department and how crucial resettlement has been for the inmates here in Maidstone.
Yes, exactly. Resettlement has been a crucial department in facilitating bringing together all the charities and involving the prisoners and keeping them aware about it, such as Spurgeon's.
Well, with Spurgeon, to be honest with you, I've had a first-hand situation with them where I had to send DVDs to my kids and also for them to send me back letters and cuddly toys, and it's been a very crucial charity that is set up and delivered by a resettlement team through Spurgeon's.
Also, another thing I believe I wanted to mention was the Citizens Advice Bureau and the importance of them as well.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, yeah, it's a good touch on that point. Citizens Advice is crucial for almost everyone in here. With the ERSs getting their documents back from police or lost property or any kind of contact with their embassies and all those kind of crucial stuff that the prisoners and inmates need, giving them advice on where to head, where to ask for help for different charities. So what I wanted to also talk about, which is another fundamental thing that the resettlements offer through the Shannon Trust, is their ability to advertise and tell everyone here at Maidstone the crucial importance of people being able to read. So through Shannon Trust and the resettlement team has been a success here in Maidstone. A lot of people have been engaged in learning and participating in reading with the Shannon Trust Foundation.
To sum up, basically, resettlement has been providing Spurgeon services, Citizens Advice Bureau, clothing for release, preparation for release, Shannon Trust, and last but not least, the detention action to be able to help prisoners among their release, which is extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, and all I can say that, yeah, we're grateful for the department being here in Maidstone and helping people.
Very much so. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to me and for letting me share our experience at Maidstone.
Thank you, Jill. Tammy, do you have anything you want to add further?
Yeah, I need to say that the resettlement pack, the release pack and the booklet, I believe is available on the information hub for anyone that wants to have a look at a copy. We're happy to share that. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So we're going to now hear from Michelle Loudon from Home Office. Hi, Michelle.
Morning, everybody. My name's Michelle Loudon, and I'm one of two assistant directors that lead the immigration prison teams. I'm responsible for the south, which is sort of East Anglia Down, and Carolyn Comer, who's my colleague, is responsible for the north. Just a little, well, with regards to mine include the Mount, Huntercombe, South London Mobile, which includes Belmarsh, Brook House, Tinsley House, which are a few of the our own detention centres. Brixton, I've also got the Verne, Wormwood Scrubs, Maidstone, Wandsworth and Pentonville. Caroline has in the north has Morton Hall, Hull, Risley, Leeds Mobile, Moorland, and she will be taking over Northern Ireland as well. So that's just to give you a sort of a bit of the geography with it all. The role itself of FNORC is basically to protect the public by deporting foreign national offenders where legislation permits. The role of the immigration prison officers within the prisons where they're embedded is basically they're the operational arm of FNORC, and their primary role is to assist the case owners to progress cases to conclusion, to support HMP colleagues in managing the FNO population throughout the whole deportation process. Other activities are undertaking interviews to establish nationality and identity, induction of the foreign national offenders, establish any previous offending in the UK or abroad, progressing NRM and asylum interviews, and the service of all paperwork within hub prisons, and providing support to the OMU staff in all other establishments. And also contributing to, as requested, to any act involving an FNO. It tends to be as well where if a prison or a prisoner is sort of in the mix somewhere, it'll be, I'll give that to immigration prison team. They'll be able to do it, or they'll sort it. So we tend to take on various bits, whatever is needed to sort of help progress a case or help with HMPPS, we'll sort of do. The work that's happened, I've been in this post just over a year, about 14, 15 months, and the difference that the hub's made to us. I mean, obviously, I work and speak sometimes daily with Sophie, but definitely sort of weekly. And then there's sort of Ellie and various meetings. But it's having, to me, it's like Sophie works for HMPPS, but she understands what they need, but she also understands what we need. So we can both give each other something that's going to benefit for each other's side, and working sort of the interaction and the collaboration has just been phenomenal, and I can't sort of go on about that enough. It's not the Sophie show here, Sophie. I don't mean if that is the hub as itself. It just happens that you and I tend to sort of like do a lot. And with regards to that, we've been able to sort of look at the prisons, their sort of needs with, like for instance, with Wales, we've looked into that we feel that they need a permanent immigration presence there. So we've sort of looked at that one, and we've put that in, which I know Lucy's quite pleased with. But I know the cooperation between prison governors, OMU staff, and the HMP staff as well has just sort of gone from tolerating each other, is for want of a better word, to actually working together as a team. IPT, we've changed things, and with the sort of help of the prison staff, we've been able to sort of go out on the wings a lot more. Not just to serve papers. For instance, at Maidstone, we started it off there where the immigration prison staff would just, if they've got a spare half an hour, just wander around the wings when you know, they weren't sort of in their cells or they weren't at work. And the rapport between the prisoners and our staff now has just improved immensely, to the extent, I think it was something like the apps to see immigration staff has reduced by 80%, which was huge. So we have that. So we're obviously rolling that out across all of our sites. That was the reduction with that. We're discussing the needs of it all. I mean, if there's a problem, Sophie will come with me. She understands sort of how the governors work or their sort of mindset. So we've been able to sort of iron out a lot of things where staff now have got the tools they need within the prisons to sort of get on and do what they need to be doing. We're also looking with regards to interpretation services. Sophie's come on board with this because there's a possible pilot with tablets that can sort of help with the interpretation of forms. So that's another thing that we're looking into and going forward with. And with regards to like a few of the good news stories, I suppose, with Belmarsh, we've been able to sort of get allocated video link rooms to ensure that cases are dealt with promptly. We've integrated FNOR staff with the OMU department for support and guidance so that they work closer together. We have regular meetings with the #1 Governor, Jenny Lewis. We've also established awareness training for new prison officers. So this is dealt with when during their training. We're also rolling that out with OMU staff and with current staff already in the prison. So that's an ongoing thing, which just gives them more of an awareness of what we do, how they can assist us, and vice versa as well. We sort of try and do surgery, especially at Maidstone. We do them at the weekend, so that helps with the prison staff because there's less staff there. But with us there on the wings, it sort of helps them sort of deal with that type of thing. And again, with Maidstone, we work alongside the OMU. We have more surgeries, frequent wing attendance, and also we're trying to bring in where possible. Obviously, sometimes our hands are tied with it, but no Bad News Friday, so that it doesn't disrupt the wing or the FNO over the weekend, which would only sort of add to the grief for the prison staff, really. So where possible, we're trying to do that. And as I say, that's what we do. That's where I cover, and I just can't sort of say enough about the work between us and the hub. It's just completely improved 100%. That's mine in a nutshell. If there's anything anyone.
That's great. Thank you, Michelle, for that. Thanks, Wayne, for sharing the slides. Okay, so we're going to hear from Lucy next. So, Lucy?
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about today. Is the slide sharing?
Yes. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah, Wayne. Wayne, can you share Lucy's slides, please?
Yeah, if you just tell me whenever you want me to move on, Lucy, I'll move on in the background.
Thank you, Wayne. You know I'm hopeless at tech. So while we're just waiting for the slides to change over, just let me tell you a little bit about myself. So my name's Lucy Peets. I'm the Regional Drug Strategy lead for all the prisons across Wales. And I also take a lead in the foreign national offenders across Wales. So looking at what each prison are doing and how we can improve in some of these different bits. I just wanted to focus really on the title of this presentation. And what we're talking about is the FNO journey that we've had across Wales, and that does include probation services. And our huge gratitude towards the FNO team and for coming in and providing us with that support and that missing link that was making it so difficult within the prison service and the probation. So before I even start the presentation, the first thing I want to do is say a huge thank you to the FNO team for coming in and supporting us and being that link that we so desperately needed. I'm just going to skip over to the next slide then. And the structure of my presentation today is where we were, where we are now, and hopefully where we wish to be. So I've chosen this image very basic for a really clear purpose. I think the prisons were kind of the unsure leading the unsure, which led to a lot of people going, okay, let's just not do this in case we get something wrong. And so that's where we were. We all had our hearts in the right places, and we all knew that we wanted to help this group of individuals, as in the prisons we wish to help all groups of individuals. But we were scared of making mistakes, and we were very scared of getting something wrong and making things worse. So often what we'd do is be like, oh, this doesn't feel right, but I don't know what else to do, so I'll leave it. So again, we had this lots and lots of good intentions, but we lacked someone to go back to and say, is this right? This is quite a complicated process. Am I doing this right? Am I giving them everything that they need? Was there more that I should be giving them? And we kind of came at it from a perspective of, you know what, if someone I loved was in a foreign prison, or I was in a foreign prison, what would I want? What would be something which would make me feel more comfortable and more secure? Again, where we were was with no expert support at all. So it literally was, well, this is what we used to do, so let's carry on doing it. And that's something that we carried on doing. We knew we had lots of problems. We knew we weren't doing what we could be doing as the best as we possibly could be doing it. But each prison held on to their own problems and sort of just muddled through it their own way. And there was no consistency. In typical prison service and probation service fashion, we were hitting our KPIs, so no one really minded. As long as we've got those across the board and we knew we were providing the data that we needed to provide, what was actually behind that and the experience seemed to be a lot less. And so we were offered as part of this project if we'd like a member of staff who could come in and be paid for by the team and offer some support. But unfortunately, we were in a position where we couldn't have any more staff join another project. We were just so low on staff numbers. And so what we agreed to do was informally join the project and sort of dip in and out as much as we possibly can. And I've got to be honest, it's one of the best decisions that we've ever made and one of the most helpful decisions that we've ever made. So the next stage is where we currently are, thanks to the team and thanks to the F&O officers based in the prison. So if you could skip to the next one, Wayne. So what we've done is we've implemented something really basic. We knew our foreign nationals. In each prison, we knew our foreign nationals. But what we didn't do is identify them at their earliest possible points. So what we do is the second that they come through the door, we know who our foreign nationals are and we communicate that. So rather than that information sitting on the wing or with one or two officers, we make sure that's communicated throughout the entire prison and whoever else might actually work with them. What we look at is we really promote the importance of the big word. So the big word is a translation service that is across probation and the prison service. And we can simply dial into and set up a translation service, a three-way telephone conversation between whoever the member of staff is, the F&O in our care, and the translator. The prison staff kind of knew something about this. They often found it a bit difficult. They weren't sure if they were allowed to ring it because there's a cost associated to it. So what we did is we simply had a massive day of promoting the big word and saying, yes, please use it. This includes education staff. This includes healthcare staff. Anyone who's having a conversation with this individual should be using the big word. We've also figured out that we can get stats on the big word and which shows how much people are using it. And so when something's dipped, we can go back and challenge people about why they aren't using the big word. We've adopted we're all in this together approach. So I think some of the staff used to say, well, I don't deal with foreign national offenders, so it's got nothing to do with me. And we challenged that quite a lot and said, actually, foreign national offenders are everyone's business. You may not come across them today, but you may tomorrow. Particularly the wing staff will say, actually, you will come across them and you need to be in part of this. One of the simple things that we looked at was an All Wales database, which shows the prison and all of the prisons, the prison staff, sorry, in all of the prisons, and what language skills they have. We never use staff for anything to do with legal issues, but what we do is we promote staff to have a conversation with the individual in their first language to help them feel a little bit more relaxed and help them talk more fluidly and more comfortably. So, for example, if I've got someone in Cardiff who needs to speak Russian, for example, and I haven't got any staff in Cardiff who can speak Russian, then I can ring Berwyn, where I know that they do, and they can have that telephone conversation with that individual just to help put them at ease and do a well-being check. We've highlighted the importance of language, not just ethnicity. So from a prison service point of view and equalities, we always highlight, you know, what is an individual's ethnicity? Is that an issue? But what we're figuring out is actually what's way more important in the prison service is what language someone can or can't speak, and whether that's their reading ability, whether that's writing ability, and whether that's understanding ability. So something we're pushing for all the prisons is to record this. And so to make sure that we understand what someone's actual ability is like using the ESOL teachers. Often the staff will say, well, they can understand me, we're fine, I've got this, and they don't. You know, we can often say phrases or words when we go abroad as well. We don't necessarily know what they mean in context. It's had a wider world impact. So we've started to pick up much more, not just you're a foreign national offender and you're in our prison, but what does the wider world what's going on in the wider world impact upon you? So, for example, when the Russian and Ukraine conflict started, we had a conversation with all FNOs who were either Russian or Ukraine or had links to either those countries or families in those countries to check on their well-being, to see how we might be able to support them, to see what we might be able to do for those individuals. We've recently had the issue with Iran in terms of headwear and, you know, what's going on there. And so, again, we checked in with them because we were aware of the communication blockers and them contacting family in Iran. We have a greater awareness of the process that works on our side. So, for example, we know now about releasing on tagging whilst waiting for an IS-91 decision. We know what should happen at which stage, and we're able to chase that on behalf of the foreign national offenders. What we know in the prison service is that we have a huge population pressure at the moment, and now we know these facts, we're able to move people on a lot quicker and free up space, particularly in the local prisons. We've got much more greater community links. We know what agencies are available and where, and so we're able to direct people and also their families to what support is available for them to help them understand that we are welcoming and we do want them to be part of this community if that's what's decided. We can advocate for the FNOs. For example, I've got an individual in Cardiff, Michelle, heads up, I've just flagged him with you, who was recently on an instant at height. So it shut the regime down for 3 hours. We know where the blockers are, and so we're advocating for him on his behalf and saying, right, okay, you're right, this isn't right. Let's see what we can do for you. I know I've got this avenue to go down. I know I've got this contact I can push. We're trying to make the custody environment more welcoming for all. So we are putting up different posters in different languages and recognising that that is important. And we're knowing their rights. And that benefits us as a prison, because what it means is that we can support them and make sure that they are hitting the targets that they should be hitting and moving forward where they should be going. Would you like to move on, Wayne, if that's okay? So we're far from perfect. And I think listening to the first video made me realise there's a hell of a lot more that we can do. However, I've got to remember that we're small local prisons as well. We really need to truly understand the FNO experience, and one of the ways that we can do that is through second generation migrants. So often what we know is that actually FNOs are a really compliant group and a really grateful group. I recently held a forum with 4 Albanian individuals who were talking to me about how wonderful the prison is, how much they love it, how grateful it is, and kept saying to them, is there anything you want from me? For you? No, everything's wonderful, it's lovely. And I kept pushing this, and halfway through, one of the guys said, actually, I've got a tooth infection and I really need some antibiotics. Can you get them for me? And I was like, well, no, but I can point you in the direction of a dentist. And it transpires he's absolutely petrified of a dentist. And so we were working through some of these bits, but he would not have mentioned that. And I think I was on the 3rd time of what can I do for you before he even mentioned that actually he's got this raging tooth infection, which is really problematic for him. What we need to be doing is tapping into our second generation migrants who can support with us and talk to us about actually what should they expect. We're action and feedback that FNO, oh, I've done that bit, sorry. We're trying to do a bus to bed activity. We know there's still bits of the prisons where perhaps we don't welcome FNOs the same way that we do with English speaking individuals. So they might not be and fully understand what's going on and why we're asking them to do certain things. So we're looking at those gap stills. We're doing welcoming family events where we encourage the families to be able to come into the prisons to see that actually the staff are on your side. The staff want to welcome you. This is what a prison is about in Britain and specifically Wales in our case. And we support you guys as much as we support the men in our care. We're starting to look at ESOL and actually is it doing exactly what we want it to do? So the ESOL classes, English as a second language, are absolutely fantastic, but we noticed that there's probably more that we can do for these individuals to help them appreciate the language in terms of getting different jobs or managing the legal system. And we're also sharing more information. So something that we've done in Wales is get the men ID badges. And so all it says is in there is I'm a foreign national offender. Please use the big word when speaking to me on all occasions. And it helps to prompt the staff to remind them that they need to be mindful of that this individual doesn't have English as a first language. Could we move on, Wayne? Is that okay? And here is probably our lessons learnt and what we possibly can do. So the first one and the most basic one is know your FNO population, but also to let everyone else know. So on a monthly basis, each of the prisons in Wales send out a fact sheet of, you know, what is our population? And then the top 3 ethnicities, what we do is we send out facts about that country, simple things of how to say hello in certain languages. And it's making the world of difference. It's showing that officers do want to be involved and they do know what their population is and what they need. We're encouraging learning and knowledge for all staff, and what we're saying is it's everyone's business. It's no good. You can't say anymore in the prison setting or probation setting, well, you know what, send him to the F&O officers. They don't exist. So we all need to have some sort of knowledge or an ability to find out about what's best for this individual. And the third most important one is the importance of language as well as ethnicity, not just ethnicity alone. So yeah, that's a brief whistle-stop tour from Wales, and we're very grateful for Michelle for all the support that she's provided us in Wales and helping have someone embedded into the team. It's made a whole world of difference, so thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for that. Okay, so next we're going to have Sophie and Ellie providing an overview of what the F&O Information Hub has achieved in the past year and what the next steps for the hub is.
Thanks, Shan. Can I just check before we start that everyone can see those slides as I'm sharing? I'm taking the plunge. So brilliant. Okay, so thank you all. And, you know, it's really good to see so much engagement in the chat. Thank you so much for your questions. I'm really hoping that we might actually be able to answer some of these in this presentation, and then anything that we don't cover, we'll try and cover in the Q&A bit. And Lucy, Tammy and Michelle are sort of hanging on to sort of answer some questions as well towards the end. So thank you all so much for attending. As I said at the beginning, so I'm Sophie Lovejoy, I'm the Deputy Head of Foreign National Offenders, and we have, as a team, the F&O Information Hub team have launched our Information Hub just over a year ago. So we're going to give you a little bit of background into the foreign national population, just some sort of national sort of highlights and where we came from, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we've done and what we're doing next. So the foreign national population, why is it so important and why are we all here today? And I think it's really important to note that prisons face difficulties with foreign nationals, whether you've got 20, whether you've got 200, they are a complex cohort, and it's the additional immigration journey that people have to go through, as well as their custodial journey. That additional layer is just so difficult for them, and it's difficult for staff as well to have to manage that. And what we want to be able to do is provide some sort of national consistency, really, across the piece. Places that may have immigration teams embedded, they might have immigration teams that visit once or twice a week, or they might not see them too often if they have a much lower population. So how can we provide the support needed to all staff? The population, just over 9,500, that's kind of regular. I think it went up to about 9,800 during sort of COVID when the prison population really sort of spiked. And it's about 12% of the population of the overall prison population, which again is relatively stable. The IS-91 population, so those held under immigration detainee powers, you may have seen some spikes in that over COVID, shall we say. Places at the IRCs, for example, were short, were in demand. The small boats crises that we see in the news, things like that. Those beds that the Home Office have are limited, and we provide support to the Home Office via an SLA, where we do house some immigration detainees who finish their custodial sentence on a risk-based sort of system. So we've got 166 nationalities represented, over about 115 prisons. So really important to note, that some prisons don't have that many foreign nationals, but that doesn't mean that they don't also need some support from us and across the piece. We've got a top 5 nationalities there, so I don't think it'll be a surprise to most of you that Albanian is the top and has been for quite some time. We've got the Polish population at 820, the Romanian, the Jamaican and the Lithuanian. I would say that Irish does sit in there, normally about 3rd or 4th, but as we don't deport to Ireland with the open borders that we've got, I haven't included them in this slide because they're not sort of subject to the same sort of deportation processes, and the need for the immigration teams isn't there, so that's why they're not on there. So that's why this is important, and I'm going to hand over to Ellie to talk a little bit more about the background of our team and sort of the more strategic side to what we do.
Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, so the hub weaves into all of the work that we do across the F&O team, but I thought I'd just share a little bit more about what we do, and both sort of aspects in terms of prisoner transfer team and the hub team. So we've got our aims in terms of managing F&O safely and decently, our government priorities to maximise the removals of FNOs by supporting the Home Office, and then obviously preparing FNOs for release and removal, which is where the hub massively kicks in. In terms of the way we do this, we've got our operational processes and policies there, but really it's around how how we do that on a policy level. So we have the FNO hub. Obviously, we are shortly going to be introducing a policy framework for the immigration detainee group held in prisons to support prisons to manage those individuals. We have, but in the meantime, we've already issued instructions around a special payment for detainees held in prisons and how to access legal aid. We monitor the Home Office performance of how IS 91s are issued to individuals. So this is where somebody is coming to the end of their sentence, going to be held under immigration powers by the Home Office, and that we expect that decision to be made at least 30 days before somebody's conditional release date so that we can safely manage them. And modern slavery and trafficking. You'll be seeing some guidance via the SLB coming out shortly around how we can support victims or potential victims of modern slavery as well. So that part is all around kind of how we support prisons through policy, operational guidance and practices. The other part is about the sort of system approach and reflecting the needs of the FNOs themselves. And so we've got, again, the hub runs through that, but we also have for example, I mentioned earlier about the facilitated return scheme. So this is a return scheme where individuals receive finance as well on being removed. And we have worked with the Home Office really closely to promote this particular return scheme and seen real increase in numbers across the estate of people being returned via FRS. We've alluded and heard from some of our FNO SPOCs today. I think Sophie mentioned in terms of, those prisons who have small numbers of FNOs, sometimes it can be a bigger challenge because there isn't necessarily the infrastructure in place to support FNOs, like some of the prisons that have embedded Home Office teams, for example. But we need to be able to support those individuals and provide guidance. So everything that's on the hub is for every prison, whether you're an FNO only prison, hub prison, or a standard Cat C or Cat B. But the SPOC helps to shed some sort of highlight FNOs amongst all the other priorities, all the other things that have to be done within prisons, and kind of we can share what we need to with those SPOCs so that prison staff know where to go to find out further information. And I think it's been a real success, and I hope to expand it further. We have a service level agreement with the Home Office, so we work closely to make sure that that's fit, that's as it should be. It's for both sides. So considering what prisons need in terms of Home Office support, and also what the Home Office need from prisons to be able to access FNOs and progressed cases. And of course, prison visits is absolutely key. It's the best way for us to understand what's happening for staff and prisoners. So we try and do as many as possible. And then just lastly on that strategy point, removal mechanisms, making sure they're effective and efficient. So the FNO team, the prisoner transfer side of the team, they have been looking at automating referrals. So obviously every prison refers all foreign national sentenced prisoners to the Home Office upon sentencing, and it's a manual process currently, but we have been running an automated pilot so that happens from NOMIS straight to the Home Office. So and that's been working successfully. ERS task force, so early removal scheme task force. Early removal scheme is how the most foreign nationals are removed under that particular scheme, and we're working with the Home Office and the MOJ closely to see how we can maximise the efficiency of that removal scheme. Prisoner transfers. So if people don't know, prisoner transfers are where prisoners are transferred back to their home country to continue their prison sentence in a prison there. and we have our casework function within our team who manage those prisoner transfers with foreign jurisdictions. Also we bring British nationals back into our prisons where they may be serving their prison sentence abroad. So the casework function do that, and they do it very successfully, very efficiently. IS 91 moves. So Sophie mentioned we had a spike in terms of immigration detainees held in prisons during COVID. And we worked really closely with the Home Office to try and move out those who've been risk assessed to go to immigration removal centres and to get those moved over, vulnerable individuals to be moved over, testing protocols during COVID, and coming out the other side, we are always working with the Home Office to make sure people are moved across to IRCs where appropriate. And also we have a appeals pilot running at the moment, which is looking at speeding up appeals. So people who are appealing under their deportation status, to speed up those appeals and move things along so that then deportation decisions can be made and cases can be progressed by the Home Office. Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks, Ellie. So what is the FNO Information Hub? So that's how we sort of all came about and the sort of overall stuff that we do, but how does that actually affect you guys on the ground doing the job day in, day out? So we set up the hub on the old intranet, which I think we can all admit wasn't the greatest technology invention ever, and it was quite difficult to find, as I'm aware, but now we are on the new intranet, which you should all be able to access internally if you have a Justice account, and it's really quite straightforward. I don't know if you can see on this little picture here, unfortunately, I tried to get as much as possible, but when you click on prison service, we literally come up as working with foreign national offenders, and it's there, it's in your face. So we are trying to get as much on there as possible. At the moment, it's quite basically separated out. So you've got support for staff, you've got your support for foreign nationals directly. There's things on there like the international crisis support. So when Ukraine and Russia sort of started at the beginning of the year, we did some bits on that. There's also the modern slavery bit as well, and just a bit about the FNO team, really, and that's the wider team. So the repatriation team, you've got our team. We've got the MOJ policy teams, etc., and just really getting to know who we are and what we do and which areas do what. So this is where we sit, and the idea is really that we have a bit of an idea from the strategy stuff that Ellie just talked about, the policy things that we need to do to make the relationships work between HMPPS and the Home Office. But there's also things that we need to do to help the operational line, and so what we try and do is balance those needs. So I'm going to move on to talk about the service and what sort of stuff we do. So we are an online information hub, but we do visits, and we have tried to do some sort of hard copy distributions of stuff. We realise that it's not easy on the operational line to log onto the internet every day and check for updates. It's not easy to check your emails all the time. So as much as we can, we are trying to do events like this and capture lots of people at a time in short, sharp bursts. Using the new IT that we've got to try and reach prisons through sort of videos or different means. But the majority of our stuff will all be held online in a resource, and they are supposed to be printed. So we try and make them as pretty as possible to get them printed off and attract the information. And the stuff that we've got on there, if you haven't seen already, so we do have like regional signposting sheets. Things that will help different regions, both for people in prison and in the community. How can we provide that service throughout their custodial journey into the estate, into the community? Sorry. How can we try our best to make sure that they know what they're entitled to where possible? It's really difficult to access or to judge what somebody's immigration status is directly, and that's not necessarily the prison or the probation staff role, is to not identify what they can entitled to, what they're entitled to, what their immigration status is. But what we can do is try and assess what sort of things they can help. Lots of charities out there and I think that's been quite heartwarming, actually. I know Amanda's worked really hard on the UK ones, and you know, finding people out there who do want to help as much as possible, despite what somebody's immigration status might be. We do also have some for in-country signposting sheets as well. So if people are returning to their home country, we've looked at signposting sheets to say, you know, this is how you might get your driving license, this is how you might find somewhere to eat, somewhere to stay. But we've also looked at fact sheets, so people who maybe haven't been to that country for a very long time, if ever. Things like, what's the weather like, what's the currency there, those sort of really basic human needs that just we hope from a well-being perspective manage somebody's expectations. And if they are being deported or returned to their home country, how can we make that process and that journey as smooth and as easy as possible for them? And also, how can we support staff? Because managing somebody who's going through that, you know, if you're as able to get as much information as possible as to what that might be like, or to support somebody, we recognise that's kind of the job of people in the prison service, and it's very difficult at that operational line. If you can't do that, it can be really tough. What we're also looking to do, as well as providing sort of fact sheets and things on removal mechanisms and trying to better everybody's understanding on those really complex processes that the immigration and the people affected by immigration journeys and things like that have to go through, we want to create a network of people. And that's why it's so nice to see so many people on here today from different areas, from Home Office, from prisons, from probation, operational staff, non-operational staff, all sorts of people, because you all have good stuff that other people can learn from. We've been doing loads of visits lately. I think we've done sort of 15, 20 visits, and we're trying to do sort of once or twice a month at the minimum, just to really get round, support people, but also learn what good stuff is going on there. You know, there's some great stuff that we've seen, and you know, Lucy and Tammy are you know, excellent examples of this. And how can we better that? And you know, those prisons where they're struggling in certain areas, how can we get that? The new IT we're hoping is going to really help. So we've got a new Teams channel. It's a public Teams channel, and anybody within the internal prison service can join. And what we want to do is encourage people to share, you know, if they've got queries on translations, or, you know, they're not quite sure how to manage somebody from a certain country, or they've got to get in touch with the Home Office or something, that we can encourage other operational staff to sort of, you're not on your own, you know, and sharing practice that way as well. So we're really keen to sort of get that up and running, and we know that the IT in prisons is sort of a slowly process, but I think we're at the stage now where by the end of this year, hopefully most people will have access and be able to share things. And especially, I mentioned translations, and we'll come on to language in a little bit, but trying to share those sort of niche language translations. If you've got a policy or a form translated in something, I don't know, Vietnamese or something, and that you could share with other people. And we have been putting things on there. So if we've come across things like safer custody documents, for example, some immigration bail forms went up the other day in different languages, we're trying to share those as widely as possible too. Regular communications, signposting, and we're still trying to find out the best ways to reach not only staff but foreign nationals, you know, foreign nationals themselves. If we can stop diluting the messages as much as possible and getting messages directly to them, how can that help? There's research and evidence. So we've got an MOJ policy team. They regularly do sort of insights and deep dives into certain populations that we can learn from. And we've also just had some language research being conducted across the estate, which we're going to really, it's a great evidence base for us to learn from, how we can better the services support, and if there's anything in there that we can sort of share more widely, we will. So we don't just pluck our ideas from thin air or from anywhere, really. We try as much as possible to take it from the research that's conducted and the operational line. And the bottom one, I think, is another really important one, to ensure the needs of FNOs are reflected across HMPPS. We recognise that foreign nationals can sit anywhere in the estate, and it's difficult to sort of to find that support. And I'm hoping that now we've got this central space, it's just about trying to reach people to let them know that this is where we are, and if there are things that we haven't got on there, or things that, you know, you think might be helpful, feedback is brilliant, because that will only help us support you more. So, you know, good or bad, anything that you see on there, please do let us know. Any gaps that we're missing, it would be brilliant. From a prison perspective, We do work very closely with the probation team. So Osman's coordination hub, I think Caris is on, I think I saw her in the chat earlier. So we are trying to sort of not work in silo. We have got secondees from the Home Office and the probation teams in with us that sit in our team. So we do try where possible to have a joined up approach where, you know, if we're creating a fact sheet about, let's say, the early removal scheme, it gets run by the Home Office, you know, teams, it gets run by the probation team to make sure we've included as many aspects in there as possible. But we're aware that that doesn't always work smoothly, so there might be things that we miss. So if anything that we can sort of learn from would be brilliant. So we talked a little bit about this. I'm not going to read through the slide for you. We will share these afterwards, but things that we've sort of done. So with the fact sheets that we've done, and we've also done a bit of tiered information approach. So we've got sort of very, very basic fact sheets for foreign nationals, literally, you know, bullet points that we've translated into the top 10 languages. We've then got like a slightly more detailed version for staff, and then a slightly more detailed version than that the Home Office have done. So, you know, we try and make it so that we can get you the very basic information as quickly as possible, but that if you do want more information, or if you're not quite sure, or if actually you've got a little bit more time, you've got something else that you can refer to as well. So we've got the online training module. We've talked about fact sheets about things like accommodation. We're looking at definition fact sheets as well for different areas of the Home Office, because we've got the IPTs and the immigration prison teams who do sit with us and they sit in our prisons, but there's so much more to the Home Office and the immigration journey. You've got the asylum teams, for example, you've got small boats teams, you've got the caseworker teams, and it's just learning that the immigration prison teams, they feed information through, but they are also restrained by other teams as well. So it's just trying to manage that relationship and the expectations, not just with foreign nationals and their immigration journey, but what staff can expect from Home Office and vice versa. We've done the SPOC pilot, which you've heard from a couple of our SPOCs, and if there are any foreign national SPOCs out there who maybe weren't part of the pilot, or maybe that it's an informal role, we are looking at creating we have monthly meetings with our SPOCs at the moment, but we'd love to open that up to anybody who you know, does sort of foreign national work on a regular basis, who acts as that point of contact for the prison. They're going to be once a month. And if you're interested, if you'd love to come along, see what other people are doing, absolutely no pressure, but you are more than welcome to. Please drop us an email into the functional mailbox, or to myself, or to Sham, and we can add you into some of those meetings. Just a way of sharing good practice and just a bit of support if you're having issues, somewhere to raise them. That's sort of the forum for those. So we've also done the prison reference group that's been re-established. So Alison Clark has been chairing those, although in her new role that will change. But thank you, Alison, for all of your support with those. And those that really just gather the prisons that have got the highest populations of foreign nationals, and brings them all together on a regular basis to sort of talk about things. And again, that's where we get some of our sort of intel from on what we should be doing with the operational line. We did some hard copy comms earlier this year, so some journey maps and some booklets. Hopefully every prison got those. There were 14,000 booklets sent out across the estate, and there should have only, unfortunately, there were only 2 journey maps per estate. Our budget was relatively small, but we've had some good feedback on those. So we are taking that feedback and seeing what we can do to make that a more printer-friendly journey map, and also whether we can get anything else printed in future. That will be something we will be trying to push for. And the only other thing I really wanted to mention out of all of those was the newsletter. So we've now got a roundup every month where we talk about the documents that have been added to the hub. We put a spotlight on certain things. We ask questions of you as much as trying to give you information. We also ask things if we. So, for example, libraries and having books in different languages and resources in different languages is something we got asked quite a bit. And we put a question out asking for some good practice on that last month, and trying to get a bit of information from you guys. So it's a two-way street. Whilst it's a roundup and information for you on what we've been doing and what's coming up, it's also a way of us trying to reach out and get some answers to some of the questions that we might still have as well from our point of view. And so what's next for us? So I touched on language. Language is something that we have recognised. There's quite a few gaps. There's quite a few difficulties. In an operational setting, trying to find phones and trying to find the support that you need, especially in a prison where you don't have foreign nationals very often, or you don't have so many, is a difficulty, and we recognise that. So we are feeding into the new contracts. There's some new contracts that are being looked at over the next couple of years. This is part of a much wider MOJ piece of work, so it's including the courts, legal aid agency, CAFCAS, probation, over the whole MOJ. This contract sits. So it's rather large, and it's going to take a little while, but we are also looking at other things that we can do besides the contract. So looking at the technology that we've got, how can we make better use of the digital systems that we now have in place that, you know, could make daily conversations much easier. We did have a look at things like handheld translation devices. I know there's been a few questions about those coming lately. We've not really found one that's quite suitable yet, if I'm honest. Lots of data protection queries, Wi-Fi issues. You know, different prisons have different access to Wi-Fi and different abilities, like IT capabilities. But with the new laptops and equipment that we've got in place, we are hoping that we'll be able to figure out something that we can do to support the language contracts that we already have. Looking again at the Spock pilot and how we can widen that, and how we can learn from the pilots and inform a more national approach, I suppose, to foreign national Spocks or cohort leads, and how we can take their learning from that and provide something a bit more formal, I suppose, more formal guidance on that. We're also looking at sub-cohorts of people as well. So we've got a women's Spock and a remand Spock, and we're also working with cohort leads to look at foreign nationals who might have other additional needs, like the female estate, for example, female FNOs. How do we reach them? What do we need to do differently for them? So there's still lots more for us to do, and there are some much bigger issues that we are working on in the background. But what we've delivered really is the stuff, almost quick wins, you know, stuff that is in our heads, in everybody's heads, that we can get that good practice as soon as possible. And working really with all the policy teams, trying to get ahead of any new policies, trying to make sure that policies are delivered, that paperwork is delivered in different languages where possible. You know, if a policy comes out with prisoner-facing paperwork, how can we reduce the need for that to be translated? How can we ensure that foreign nationals and the complexities that come with that are accounted for ahead of policies coming out, so that we're starting to get approached and starting to sort of make our name in that sort of strategy and policy area to try and be a bit more proactive with those, rather than having new policies and having to figure out how that works afterwards. So I think I've covered everything I needed to. I will just hand back to Ellie very quickly before I hand back to Sham, and just make sure, is there anything that I needed to cover that I haven't?
No, tons there covered. Thank you very much, Sophie. And just really want to say I'm really proud of the team. I think we've achieved a lot in the last year. It's been quite a journey, but we have also achieved a lot across HMPBS. I think the prisons have sort of taken the work of the Information Hub and absolutely led on it in terms of supporting FNOs and staff. So yes, just really proud, and more to come.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Ellie. And so we've now heard from all the speakers. So next bit is around Q&A. So I know I had a look at the chat, and one of the questions was around like slides, whether we'll be sharing the slide packs, which we will be. So after the session, all the slides that are being used during this session will be shared with you all. Okay, so let me look at some of the questions, and here we go. So, okay. And thank you all for your questions. We've got lots in the chat. So, okay. Okay, so this question: what resettlement support is available to FNOs outside FNO prisons? And, you know, I'm just putting it out to all the speakers. Anyone want to take it? That'd be great.
I'm happy to, if you want. So, I mean, I think I mentioned it in the presentation. The FNO Information Hub is for all prisons, regardless of whether you're an FNO prison, a hub prison, or another prison holding lots of FNOs. So the advice and guidance that we provide on the hub is for everybody to use who has access to our internal intranet. So, yeah, if there's, as Sophie's mentioned, if there's anything on there that is missing fundamentally, please let us know and we will have a look at it.
Thank you, Ellie. Anyone wants to say anything else? Okay. All right. So another one we've had is around a prisoner wants to be deported under TERS, but a prisoner is struggling to progress this. Any?
Yeah, I'll come in. I'll if we share the TERS mailbox and information, and we can share that out on the chat. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you. So this is around the support that the FNO Information Hub is providing in terms of the SPOC pilots and so forth. Can this support be replicated nationally?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So what we're trying to do is provide consistency across the estate, definitely, but there is, because of the different types of prisons, we also, so for example, you've got your FNO only estate, you've got Maidstone, you've got Hunter Combe, and you've got Morton Hall, and they will have different provisions to other prisons. But what we're trying to do is, whilst the same approach across the estate might not be something that we can realistically achieve, we're trying to find how we can identify what support is needed and which prisons will benefit from that. So if you think that anything that we've talked about would be helpful within your prison, we'd be more than happy to sort of talk about it, talk through what we can do to support you. It may not be exactly the same as something that sort of Maidstone, Hunter Combe or Morton Hall in particular can do, because they've got that additional resource and because they are foreign national dedicated. But what we can do is look at how we can learn from that and put that in other areas of the estate, sort of where possible. So I'm hoping that answers that question. It might not be something we can deliver directly, but in some way or form we can definitely take some learning and try and help improve things if that's needed.
Thank you, Sophie. So this question, I'm going to put that to Michelle. So this is a question and comment. It just says, cannot get hold of immigration caseworkers.
Yeah, that's something that previously, before coming to IP immigration prison teams, I was actually leading with casework, and we did trial having case owners aligned to prisons. So we did it at Wandsworth and we did it at Maidstone. Then obviously COVID hit, so you know it was really, really difficult. We had to put it on hold. Jade Rosario is my equivalent now in casework. She's really, really super keen to sort of get this started again. And we have, for instance, Claire Acott, we've aligned her to Maidstone. There's Michelle Colgate, who's more with Hunter Combe. So we are looking at that and spreading it down, because obviously all their dedicated phone lines as well stopped during COVID. So we're sort of looking at getting those reinstated. But if you have any queries at all, I know my inbox is going to go berserk now, isn't it? Is please just email me and I can sort of direct it to the relevant casework team or get you a SPOC. So
thanks, Michelle, as well. Before you offer up your email address, I just say that the IPTs and the their functional mailbox and their individual names we've got a list of them on the hub. So if you're not sure who your immigration prison team person or functional mailbox is, there is an Excel spreadsheet on the hub, so you can go on there and have a look as well. So maybe before people bombard you, they could have a quick look on there, reach out to their IPT, and then maybe come back to you if they're struggling to get hold of them.
Yeah. But more than happy, only because I mean I know everybody's suffering with resources and things like that, but casework currently are on their knees, and there's a lot of work we're doing with, for instance, Maidstone weren't meeting all of their IS 91, so Claire's come in to look at ways on that to try and sort of mirror what Hunter Combe's doing, because theirs is very, very good. So and Jade, who's obviously my equivalent, we're very keen, for want of a better word, if somebody doesn't reply to you or do something, that we're aware. So I am quite happy for that to sort of be a bit of an go-to as well. No problem.
Thanks, Michelle. I've just noticed that Amanda's got a hand up as well, so I didn't know if she wanted to come in on that question. Amanda?
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. I was just going to mention that there is an escalation process in terms of community offender managers, because I noticed that some of those questions were related to community offender managers trying to contact caseworkers, and it's via the F&O coordination hub. I think there's some information on Equip about that. So I think you have to go through your manager, and then you email the inbox. If you're having those communication issues, they can escalate it and try to unpick what's going on.
Thanks,
so I just
Amanda.
thought I'd mention that.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. What we can do actually maybe is if we share the link to that on Equip in the chat, maybe afterwards if we can.
Yeah,
dig it out that way.
I'll share a link to the probation hub's actual intranet page as well, because I think there might be, I'm guessing there's probably something there with the email address as well, so I'll go and have a look at that now.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Michelle. We'll hand back over to you, Shan, when you're ready.
Okay, so we've got a question about how can comms be informed when a prisoner will move into detention rather than released? There seems to be a gap between prison and community not being addressed.
Do you want me to pick that one up? Yeah, so what we're doing is we're working really closely with the Probation Hub, and there's actually a new policy at the moment about foreign nationals in the community that we are looking at building sort of together, and through that we'll be looking at these sorts of things. So I think at the moment there's lots of informal processes that happen, updating NOMIS, for example, those sorts of things. But the new F&Os in the community policy that Osman and I think it's Brian Chapman are leading on will sort of help make things a little bit clearer as to what those processes should be. So whilst I may not be able to give you a direct answer now, I can assure you that from a policy perspective, we are looking at how we can better those processes, and also through the Home Office bilats that we have. Osman in the probation team is also working on how it's a new strand that they've actually created, a new focus on how we can better the communication about foreign nationals in the community, and things like that. So that should help with some of that com to com stuff. It's being looked at through a strategic lens at the moment.
That's great. Thank you, Sophie. And what support is there for contracted prisons?
I'll go again if that's okay. So I actually I went and visited Five Wells. So we've been to Peterborough a little while ago, but went to Five Wells literally last week. And that's something that we really talked about, is how can we better the information that gets fed through to private prisons, because this is relevant for all prisons. It's not, we're not just here for HMPs. So whilst the intranet is available to staff, I believe, in contracted out prisons, we're also looking at how we can better the way that we contact the controllers. So we'll be looking at doing sort of, we've done a few regional meetings, hub meetings, so looking at PGD meetings, getting the governors together. And there's a similar controllers meeting that we're going to try and target some training at. But also they do get through the SLBs, and how can we look at their intranet and trying to get information on there. So that's something that we've just literally started looking at over the last couple of weeks. Lucy, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a really basic and practical point of view, we have a private prison on our patch in Wales as well, and we simply invite them to our F&O meetings. So whenever all our F&Os get together and we're having a conversation, or we're hooking up with probation and having a wider meeting, the private prisons simply get invited to that as well, so we can have these conversations and make sure we're all on the same page.
Great, thanks, Lucy. That's really helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Shan.
Thank you. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Sophie. So there's another question. Do prisons still need to do the foreign national referral within 10 days?
Thanks, Shem. I've put a comment in there because I don't want to panic, but please continue to do the manual referral while we work through the pilot. It is working well, but we will then update prisons when the automated referral process will kick in. But please continue to do the manual referral.
That's great. Thank you, Ellie. Should IPT staff visit the prison, or is it okay that they dial in via video link? Michelle?
That's Michelle, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be for me. Well, they should be embedded in the prisons in the majority of them, and those that what we call the the hubs and the spokes, they should visit at least once a month, or if something comes up, then they'll go down and cover it, because each area, although they have a main hub prison, they'll have X amount of spoke prisons as well, when there may only be 10, 15 FNOs in there, but they are expected to visit, yes. I'm going to be told they don't now, but if that's the case, let me know, and they will be.
That's great, thank you, Michelle. And I think we've had kind of a few comments about there need to be more caseworkers being mentioned, but I just wanted to flag that up to you.
Yeah,
so.
with caseworkers, obviously our grade 5 is as previously was in FNORC, Jane Sutton, and she's come back with a really sort of clear review of what she wants. And recently, everything from head count to case owners has been completely reviewed, and she really recognises that a lot of the stuff that immigration staff do in the prisons is, if it can't be progressed, or if something's not happening in the casework, it affects us, and we're kind of like stuck. There's not a lot we can do. We looked at what we've recently done is we've sort of really dug deep into all of our asylum interviews that are outstanding, where they are, whether it be in a immigration detention centre, or whether it be in a prison. So we are going to sort of try and blitz those, but we also understand that there's no point us completing all these asylum interviews if the case owners can't make a decision on those interviews. So it's a bit of a knock-on effect. So they're looking at a dedicated team that would maybe just do the ones coming in from immigration prison teams. So that's another thing that's being looked at, which would sort of like obviously free up spaces or progress the cases on.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Michelle. This is around like translations of documents. So serving paperwork and struggling to work with Big Word to explain the paperwork to FNOs. So implications for staff resources, basically.
Again, we totally understand that, and every prison's different as to whether staff can take that, phones in or laptops in, and whether there's an area where we can do it. But we realise that this is quite a bit of a problem, really. So there's other things going on at the moment, which I sort of touched with Sophie with regards to interpretation services and what we can do to sort of try and alleviate that from obviously HMP staff as well, if we're not about. And then also looking at things that may be in different languages. At the moment, staff tend to rely on Big Word or a fellow inmate or staff themselves that can sort of speak a language. But that is being looked at, yeah.
Thanks. Am I right to just come in quickly on that as well? So a couple of things really. In that Home Office use the Big Word like we do, so they do have access to that if they can have access, but it's hard enough prison staff getting access to Big Word sometimes, yet alone sort of Home Office when they go in. I think there's also something around how the relationship that prisons have with their immigration prison teams, and if they're struggling to serve paperwork or they're struggling with somebody who has got a language need, speak to your IPT, speak to them and say, I'm really struggling. What could ask them what can they help with? They're not just there to necessarily do to do a separate job to you guys, but actually if there's stuff that you need them to be doing that they're not doing, and that you could actually pick up a few other bits, because actually rather they serve the paperwork and you maybe do some of the other bits, have a conversation with them. It's the relationship, and they do work differently in different prisons. I'd also say that we have got a couple, and we're working on getting these up, of sheets on the hub where we've tried to summarize some of the paperwork, and that then can be translated even if the original documentation can't be. So for example, the one-stop notice the original one-stop notice that they're given, we've got a sort of front sheet almost that just gives somebody a really basic overview of what they're signing, what it means, what are the next steps, what are the key deadlines. And that's translated, I think, to the top 10 languages already on our hub. But it's something that you could, instead of having the whole piece of paperwork translated, you can go on, get the one-stop notice front sheet translated into the language that you need, so that when you are serving it, they have got something that they can initially look at. Even if that means they have to go away and find sort of maybe other means, either a prisoner or go to their solicitor or something to get some more help in their language. But so we've been looking at ways around things whilst we're working out the bigger, longer term solutions about how we can better the language service provisions. So things like that are on the hub, but if there are any that you're particularly interested in that we don't have or anything like that, let us know, because if those things are particularly helpful for you, we can work on those in future. Thanks, Jan.
That's great. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Sophie. We've got some more questions coming through. How can external organizations get access to fact sheets and regional guidances? Okay.
I'd answer that one. Just, if you want to just, if you're joined today and you're external, just drop our functional mailbox an email and we'll have a chat, see what we can do. Thanks.
There's a question. It's for Sophie. Victim liaison officers, are they being considered for inclusion in communication?
Yeah, so we are looking at how, so we spent the last year really sort of building our foundation with the mail estate and the sort of real sort of bare bones really that's needed. So I think now in the future we are going to look at different areas of the prison that will benefit from some of this. So I don't think it's something that we've looked at the moment with BLOs, but I'd really be quite interested in doing that. So if I'm apologies, I haven't had a look at the chat. But if you drop me a direct email, I will be more than happy to sort of get in touch with BLOs and see if that's something that we can do sort of next step.
That's great, thank you. There's the comment about delays to release due to accommodation issues regarding lack of access to public funds. Is there anything that we can help them with?
Can we take that one? Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll come in. So access to public funds is really tricky. So we have got a fact sheet about access to public funds and what that means for a foreign national and how you can help determine what access they do and don't have. I say help determine, it's really difficult, and it is a Home Office decision, so it can change quite quickly. But we have got a fact sheet on what that actually means, because I think that's actually sometimes the key is what does it mean to have access to public funds or not. And then some of the charity and the organisation sheets that we have, especially within the community, they are, we have put on there if it specialises in people who don't have access to public funds or people whose immigration status is unknown, so to speak. So those should be able to help as well. And there's also a big Excel spreadsheet of all of those charities. So if you're not looking in a particular area, or there's a national one, there is quite a lot of resource on there about UK support for those with no access to public funds. But I don't know if, Michelle, if you've got anything from a Home Office perspective about no access to public funds that you wanted to come in with, just putting you on the spot there.
No, it is putting me totally on the spot because it's a minefield and it is dependent, but I can sort of follow that up, and sort of with any information I do get, I can forward on to you so you can pass it on.
Thanks, Michelle. And yeah, any direct or individual queries, more than happy to sort of take up between us and the coordination hub as well. They're also a really good source of information for what can and sort of what people can and can't do outside of with their access to public funds. One thing we actually to mention on public funds is we're looking at the accommodation stuff that we've got and making sure that it's clear, the guidance is clear about what foreign nationals are and aren't entitled to, things like CAS 3 and things like that. And we're working with the probation team and the policy teams and looking at those sorts of things.
Great, thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Michelle. I think this should be the final question, I'd say. So is this whole event custody focused?
That's an interesting one. So we are, I'll start and then I'll hand over, I suppose. We are our job is to manage foreign nationals in custody and to make sure that we manage their expectations and that we follow through to release and provide the resettlement options and resettlement information that we can. Like I was saying earlier, we kind of got our feet on the ground now with the operational line and the things that really we could do relatively quickly, the things that we could get that would help quickly. And I think now that the coordination hub is sort of at the same sort of level, the next steps for us really are to look at that link, like I said, with the policy, the FNAs and community policy, and looking at that joined up piece of work. So whilst we are targeting those in custody, because that's where we can target them, we know that they are in custody, so we know we can get the information to them. We're doing that piece of work, but it does feed into, we hope it will feed into how those resettlement activities come about and the practical steps to that resettlement. So it does all link in, and we are doing much more of it. It's just a very large and very broad area, and we can make small steps at the moment. I don't know if Ellie or Michelle or anybody, Tammy or Lucy, has got any questions.
I'll come in. I mean, we do have our counterparts in the probation side, the FNO coordination hub. Don't want to put them on the spot right now, but they may be doing a similar event at some point. And we are absolutely joined up. We work really closely with Osman and the team. They're doing some fantastic stuff. And we very much look across the board at both prisoners and probation. Today is focused on custody, but I'll put it out there. Maybe Osman would like to do something around probation at some time in the future. Sure.
Great, thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Sophie. So we've come to the end in terms of the Q&A part of the session. There's a couple of things I want to mention. So as I said, all the slide packs and the link to this session recording will also be provided to you guys, so you can view this again and kind of forward to people who weren't able to attend this session. And in terms of we've had some really good presentations today, so so this is my chance to kind of give out some thanks to people. So I want to say huge thanks to all the speakers who volunteered and gave their time to speak at this event. So it'd be really nice if people could show them some appreciation for via the Teams link, please. Yes. So that's really good. Thank you. And I also want to say thank you to the HMP Insights team for your technical support and promoting this session for us, and yeah, being there to kind of chat things through with us. So thank you. So we have Wayne, Nick and Jill on the call today, so thank you to you all. And obviously massive thanks to everyone for joining us today to celebrate our 1-year birthday event, and engaging with us, asking the questions. So thank you all, and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Thanks all for your feedback. Take care. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.